Next, we're just going to go over the backlit section. If you remember from class, we actually stayed in the same area and just turned Steffi around. So it's going to be interesting to kind of look at how different the photos can be even when you're right in the same location. As you're editing the photos, you're going to want to be thinking about the fact that you're really exposing for two different exposures here, because you're thinking about the way that the backdrop is, which is going to be really bright, and the way that your subject is lit, which is going to be a lot darker because the shadows are on her face. The upside of working with this kind of lighting is that the way that your subject's face will look is going to be very even skin tone. Unlike what we're working with the high contrast of the direct lighting, this is going to be even all across just because the light is coming from behind. So that's a benefit to working with it. The challenge of it is that you do have a little bit more editing to do in post because you have to be working with both those adjustments of the light in the background and then the darker light of the foreground. So we're going to go ahead and just look at a few of these photos. These were some of my favorites that we took during this section. So here I'm actually getting a lot of light coming from behind Steffi, and so that's kind of giving her this really nice glow effect, which is in a lot of contrast to this one where the light isn't coming from behind, but it's just kind of working across her hair here. So we're getting a lot of nice glow on her hair, but we're not getting the overall even glow that we're getting in something like this. So those are kind of the two different ways that a backlit photo is gonna look. Here's another example of that. Here we have this really nice overall glow, and then here it's a more direct glow that's just right behind your subject, and you're gonna get a lot more clarity here with where the subject's face, whereas here you kind of get this misty look and you don't have as much clarity. So it's really up to you kind of what your choice of aesthetic is here. Here again with the glow versus this one that is less overall glow and more of this kind of background halo around your subject. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this one. We cut the light here with this big, huge piece of the tree, and I just love how we're kind of getting this filtered light coming across the whole photograph. So again, like what we were talking about earlier, is that you have to think about the fact that you're editing for two different exposures. You've got this really, really light background and then a darker shadows on your subject's face. So what I'm going to do first is bring up these shadows and kind of bring more light into the subject's face. And choose, I think it's easiest to bring the shadows up first and choose how you want your subject to look, and then start working with the background from there. So after that, I'm going to play around a little bit with the highlights. I think I like it there. We start seeing this background come through with the blue. I personally like to get more blue into the photographs if I'm showing the sky, so it doesn't just look like this kind of whited out blob. So I'm gonna see if bringing up the blue saturation helps at all. That helps a little bit, but not too much. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back to this tool and with the highlights again like we used before. And I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger since I'm working with a bigger area. And just kind of there. We really start to see more of the blue and the sky there, which is what I really like in these kind of photos. I'm even gonna come in here and kind of try to cut those highlights in this area. And then we really start to see more of Steffi's face starting to kind of have a little bit more of a pop here. And so now we're gonna go to contrast. I'm just playing with contrast a little bit. I love how this is really starting to bring out these highlights around Steffi's face. We're really starting to see this glow come through right there. And then again, I love to bring down a little clarity and just give it that soft touch. Just to give you an example of what it would look like if I took the clarity up the other direction, we just start to get more of these hard lines. This is definitely just an aesthetic, different aesthetic approaches. I like to have a softness in my photograph, so I'm going to bring down that clarity and kind of leave it at that softness. I'm feeling overall it's a little bit overexposed, so I'm just going to bring this down and then maybe bring up some of my blacks. Again, with the blacks and the shadows, that's really for just impacting your subject's face and bringing light into it where it needs to be. And then playing a little bit with exposure again. And since we're doing just these really simple edits, I'm gonna leave it at that. Here's the difference between the two. See, this first one is a lot darker and the background of the sky is really faded. Whereas with the photo after the edits, we were really getting this kind of nice blue pop in this background and starting to see a lot more of Steffi's face. Again, here's the original, really dull and a little bit too dark. And then this is much brighter and we're really getting that blue coming through. And I think that bringing the blue out also just really kind of draws us into looking at the subject, just as the color balance between the two. So we'll work with one of these ones where her face is a little bit darker. Let's go ahead and do this one. So when you're thinking about backlight, and we're gonna get a little bit more with this, with the lens flare, but you can, like I mentioned before, you can get this really nice glow throughout, but if you cut the light out entirely, you're gonna get a very different photo. So this is actually the same composition pretty much, but it's a completely different photo. It's much more something that I'll probably lean into using more contrast here. And again, with what I was saying before, using backlight, you get this really even tone on your subject's face versus kind of the harsh contrast that you have to edit through when you're using direct lighting. So this one, without the glow, without kind of any light filtering into the lens, we're gonna just work with this contrast that we have now. So I'm gonna lean into that a little bit and just boost the contrast a lot and see how that looks. I think this is great because we're really getting this nice glow around Steffi's whole frame here, and we're also getting her eyes popping a lot. And this kind of photograph versus when you're letting in light is gonna have a little bit more of kind of that harsh, edgy feel to it. This one is a little bit more light, a little bit more whimsical, and then this one I feel just has a little bit more like intensity to it. So again, we want to bring up these shadows as our subject is just more lit with shadows, but I don't want to bring them up too much because I do like this kind of dark feeling we have with this photo. Again, I'm going to go here with the blues and try to just bring those blues up. And we want to work with these highlights. See, we're starting to really get those background highlights coming down and starting to get the blue to come through. So I think now I'm just going to go ahead and use this tool, bringing up the highlights on our subject. So just a little bit. It's not something that's even super noticeable. I think also what I want to do here is play around with the shadows. Yeah, I like how we're bringing a little bit more lightness into Steffi's face, and I'm starting to love the way that this is coming through a lot more. We're getting this really nice glow all around her. And again, I'm just going to bring the clarity down a little bit to just soften. And I'm going to go down here for luminance. I use luminance a lot when I'm working with people's face tones and trying to just soften their face tones or get a more even complexion. So I'm going to play with some of these colors that are coming through. It's not always super obvious, so you kind of just got to play around and see. Here we're seeing, this is like a really extreme version of lightening that. I don't want it to be that much, but I do want to give her a little highlight on the face here. So just gonna bring that highlight up a little bit. And then I think I'm even gonna go back to this guy and bring down the clarity a little bit more, just to give a nice like overall soft complexion here. The shadows are a little bit harsh, so wanting to just soften that up. So yeah, sticking with these more simple editing techniques, as you can see, I'm really only using a few things: contrast, highlights, shadows, whites. Some of these I'll get a little bit into the blacks, but not too much, and then clarity. So that's pretty much where I always stay, and if I want to use a little extra pop or play a little bit with color, I'll come down here. But yeah, mostly just staying in this realm of tools, and I think that you don't have to play around too much with a photograph using too many different ideas to still make it, to still really give it a lot of extra texture to it. So here's the difference between these two. Again, we really are just bringing out a lot of the color here and bringing a lot more light into her face. When you're doing these backlit shots, you really want to start thinking about how you're going to bring light into the face, because it is all in shadow.